Welcome back to MEC Live. My name is Brant,
And I'm Tammy.
And I'm David.
and we have the whole gang for you today to talk about electric vehicles. In this podcast, we want to be real basic. We don't want to go into anything too difficult to comprehend or anything like that. We just want to give you the most basic information on EVs so you can decide whether they are the right choice for you. In this podcast, we'll have a variety of things to go over, like what is an EV, why choose an EV, and some other myths. And we hope that by the end of this, you will have a better understanding of electric vehicles. So, David, what is an EV?
Well, an EV, and there are a lot of acronyms in this trade, it pains me to say. EV stands for electric vehicle. Having said that, there are different flavors that are out on the market that you can choose from. There is a hybrid electric vehicle. These are pretty common and they come in all shapes and sizes. Hybrids have been on the market in the US for about 20 years now. And hybrid vehicle is largely gasoline powered, but it has a small battery and electric motor system that gives it an assist and makes it more efficient. Hybrid typically will shut down when it's coasting or when you come to a stoplight, so you're not burning gas while you're idling. They can be pretty efficient. If you want to take the next step up, though, the next step is a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And this is a car or a truck or an SUV that can run in all electric mode for 20, 30, 35, sometimes even 40 miles or a bit more than that before its battery runs down and it kicks into normal gasoline engine mode. And then finally, there is a battery electric vehicle or BEV. Electric only, battery only. There's no petroleum associated with it at all. It runs only electric all the time. And that's how these three types break down.
And so it sounds like there's different mechanisms of fueling up these vehicles. Can you go over those real quick?
Sure, that is correct. Hybrid car is like a conventional gasoline powered car. You put gas into the vehicle when it needs it and you go on your way. With a plug-in hybrid, it's going to need gas at some point, but it's possible, depending on how and where you drive, to run it on electricity only, most, though not all of the time. And with a battery electric car, again, it's battery only, it's going to be electric powered. There are multiple ways to go about it. The simplest way of all is simply to charge up at home in your garage, in your driveway. There are also public charging stations available. There's a pretty substantial network of public charging all around America, and you can plug in at charge up at different speeds, faster or slower, depending on the kind of charger it is and the kind of car that it is.
So if you were charging at home, what kind of speed would you get there?
Well, I'll give you an example from my own experience. I drive a plug-in hybrid, and it has a small-ish battery, and I can get typically 35 to 40 miles out of that before the gasoline engine kicks in. So for me, all I do is plug it into the wall socket in our garage at night. And in 5 or 6 hours, it's pretty much ready to go on electric only. You can also speed things up a bit at home. It's basically the equivalent of an outlet for a washer or a dryer setup. So instead of 110 volts, you're going to 220 volts, and that's going to roughly cut that charging time in half. And then finally, there is something that's generically known as high-speed charging. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as level 3 charging. And for even a pure electric car like a Bolt or a Tesla or something like that, high-speed charging can get the job done in about 20 to 30 minutes, maybe a little more, depending on the make of the car.
So David, I want to go back and just clarify something with you back in your house. When you're
Mhm.
charging your vehicle at home, you're charging it just like your outlet that you're using is the same one that, let's say, you would charge your phone on, or you would plug in an appliance, a small appliance, I should say, because I do want to talk about the level 2 and what you need for that, which is a little bit larger appliance. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. The other main use I have for that particular outlet is plugging in the weed whacker when I'm cleaning up the garden in spring and summer. So it's just like a wall socket that you would see inside your house.
Yeah, yeah. And then for level 2 charging, David was talking about going to 220. That's typically what you're going to see for a washer and dryer appliance. That's why I wanted to clarify the larger appliance. So a larger appliance will take that 220, and that modification can happen if you only have a 110 outside. You can
Uh,
upgrade that to a 220.
yeah, you would need to talk to an electrician and have them install it for you, but it's not outrageously expensive, and it's going to speed up your charging time.
Excellent. That's awesome. Tammy, I got a question for you. Why choose an EV? Why buy one?
Well, there's lots of reasons that people buy an EV. Some people are interested just because it's like the cool new tech. It's the latest and greatest in innovation. And so a lot of people who are, early adopters with the new technology, they've got the newest phones, they've got the fanciest television. They're interested in an electric vehicle because of that. Some people just love them because they're super easy to drive. They're super quick to drive. They're quiet to drive. They're fun to drive. And there's very little maintenance needed. So it's a great option for if you're, not real good at working on cars and don't want to mess with that. You don't have to do a lot of messing with an electric vehicle. And so that's a good option for people who just want to have a fun car that can get them where they need to be and not have to tinker with it all the time. The other option is that it's cheaper to fuel. Gasoline is running, I think, about $3 a gallon right now and going up from there. You can fuel an electric vehicle. It kind of depends on what your electric rates are, but the going rate is half or less per mile for an electric vehicle. Typically, that's the average for driving the same amount of miles in an electric vehicle versus a gasoline vehicle. Then there's the people that are very into electric vehicles because there's less emissions, less carbon emissions, less pollution. Obviously, electric vehicles, they don't have a tailpipe. It's just an electric motor, similar to what, the kinds of electric motors that are running all kinds of things in our house, your furnace fan, and things like that. So there's no emissions from an electric vehicle. And so if emissions or pollution is your concern, there's people that choose them because of that.
And in addition to that, in the long run, there are three letters that mean a lot when you're thinking about a major purchase like a car. And those letters are TCO, total cost of ownership. Uh, a car is something that, if you take care of it, is going to last 10, 15 years, maybe longer than that. And over that period of 10 or 15 years, with an electric car, full electric, there won't be any oil changes because there's no oil. There won't be any transmission fluid to worry about or something going wrong with that because there's no transmission, there's no radiator. So there's no radiator fluid or cooling system for things to go wrong with. It's not unusual for somebody who has a full battery electric, 100% electric car to go in for service once a year, and what they'll do is basically change the cabin air filters, update the software, and rotate the tires. So they can and often do cost more upfront, but if you're looking at the lifetime of that car, there are a lot fewer systems for you to spend money on and a lot fewer points where things can go wrong.
Yeah, and to David's point, I own a battery electric vehicle as well, and I've had it for nearly 3 years. It'll be 3 years in May. And the only maintenance that I have ever done on it are 2 tire rotations, and I bought some new air filters for $34. So that is it. That's all I've done. It's cost me less than $100 in maintenance over 3 years. So it's a pretty impressive when you start thinking about the costs over the lifetime of the vehicle versus just the upfront cost, which admittedly is more expensive.
Sure. And again, a lot of variability is possible because everybody has a different commute, a different lifestyle. People, may have relatives who live in a distant city and they see them on an ongoing basis. Everybody's patterns are going to be a little bit different. For me, since we're working from home in the age of COVID, I don't drive that much around town. And so for me, I'm down to the point where I spend about $10 a month on gasoline. It's a small car, but I'm able to run it around Kansas City or able to run it around Kansas City essentially on electricity almost all the time.
Cool. Tammy, do you have something to say additionally?
Yeah. So David, you brought up your average commute, and that's something I think that's important to think about when people are looking at electric vehicles. I know a lot of the issues, people are concerned about range. They hear, okay, this vehicle gets this range. They have an estimated range when you're looking at an electric vehicle. There was a study done recently. All of people's daily driving commute is less than 30 miles. So you're looking at about 80% of people, their commute is less than 30 miles every day. So they could drive a PHEV or a battery electric vehicle could meet their daily commute needs for 80% of people. Now there are some people who are more than that, but only 2% of people are over 70 miles daily in their commute.
Wow.
And so that means 98% of people, their needs could be met by your average PHEV or EV.
And again, it's not like there's no way for you to do a long distance road trip if you chose to. A few years back, Tesla began rolling out a pretty extensive national network of high-speed charging stations along interstates, as well as some federal highways. And now other organizations like utility companies and state governments are putting up similar networks. Tesla, backtrack here, Tesla has a proprietary charging system. So it only fits Tesla automobiles, but there's a standard for where you plug in. And most of the new stations will work for any other make of electric car. You have to plan a little bit more than you might otherwise, but there's no reason you can't. If you want to do the Great American Road Trip, you can definitely do it in an EV.
Yeah. And there is been news that Tesla is looking to open up their charging to all electric vehicles soon. So I don't know, we'll see if that happens. That'll really expand the number of charging stations that are available for electric vehicles all across the country.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and the Tesla network is already pretty extensive as it is, but when you start to include Tesla's charging network with everybody else's charging network, the list dramatically increases, and therefore it makes driving that interstate a heck of a lot easier than it was maybe like 5 years ago or something like that.
Oh yeah, and again, bear in mind that these highway networks of high-speed charging, that isn't the only option for a lot of employers. They will have level 2, that's one step down, level 2 charging systems in place in employee parking lots. So we've got a number of good-sized companies here in Kansas City that do that already. Places like Black & Veatch, which is an engineering firm, so obviously a lot of engineers, a lot of people interested in technology. But there are options, employer-based or public. You're going to the movies, you're going shopping, you're going to the mall, you're going to the doctor's office. There are a lot of places that you might not think of off the top of your head where you can plug in and charge up your car.
Yeah, and just to give some clarity and confirmation, so what you're typically going to see on the highways are your level 3 or DC fast charging or your quick charging. There's a ton of names for them. They all kind of mean the same thing. And that's going to charge your car from whatever you have it to up to about 80%. And like David said, 20, 30, maybe 40 minutes, depending on your total range of your vehicle. And then what you see at your home, what you see out in commercial areas like restaurants, movie theaters, etc. Those are going to be your level 1 and level 2 charging. They will be more of a top off. So you just plug in, and when you're done, and you'll gain some range just by plugging in for a short period of time.
Which is one of the awesome things about EVs, is that you don't have to make a special trip somewhere else to fuel them. You can fuel it while you're parked at home. You can fuel it while you're parked at work. You can fuel it while you're at the movie theater or doing your grocery shopping or what have you. It's not a separate trip where you have to go somewhere to a station to get the fuel for your vehicle, because there's electricity everywhere. And anywhere there's electricity, you can charge your car.
And it's not like these things are scarce. I'm just looking at the alternative fueling station locator, and that is operated by the Department of Energy. And as we speak, there are 53,254 locations in the US and Canada that are publicly available charging stations that you can plug in. Some are level 2, some are level 3, but they're all over the place.
Yeah, and so David, I wanted to hear personally from you. Talk about the philosophy change in fueling up for you, where you used to, well, and you still do to an extent with your plug-in hybrid. You have to go to a gas station or a fueling station. But
Sure.
now that you have a plug-in hybrid and you have to charge it as well, how's that mentality change for you? What do you typically do?
Oh, well, it's really not all that different for a long distance trip to drive the car that I have. You go until the electric runs out, but then it's a highly efficient gasoline engine that kicks in. Just an example of that. I took a trip from Kansas City down to the Ozarks and back last summer. Full charge, full tank of gas, about a 450-mile trip. I got back, I still had 2 bars of gasoline left in the tank, and I never got below 60 miles per gallon. But in terms of where I'm going, it's easy. If there's an outlet, I can plug in. If there's a level 2 charging station, I can plug in and charge while I'm doing other things. You just take a look at, I'll go ahead and give the address. It's afdc.energy.gov/stations. Bring it up online. There's an app for your phone. Pick a fuel, whatever it is, in this case, electric, and let the map do the talking. It'll tell you where to go to get charged up.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very similar experience myself. Whenever I get home, I look to charge up whenever I can and keep it fully charged, so that if there ever is an emergency or something that is not going to be in my daily commute, that it's ready to go. And so when I get home, I just go and charge it. It's super easy. There's a plug outside in my garage, and I just pop it right in. It takes about 5 seconds to do, and we're good to go. And I don't have to worry about it. It'll automatically shut off at a percentage that you deem, and it's really, really simple.
Yeah, it's not like you're going to overfill the tank, because the car will shut down once batteries reach full capacity. So you're not going to damage anything by charging it at home or at a public station.
Yeah. So I want to shift gears a little bit. And talk about some myths for electric vehicles. And when I say some myths, there are a ton of myths. Tammy, would you like to talk about some myths that you've heard and try to dispel some of them?
Well, so the Colorado Energy Office did a survey recently, and they found that 70% of non-EV drivers, so potential they're thinking about EVs, but 70% of them think that they cannot charge at home unless they have special equipment. Like, they were under the impression that you had to buy a charging station to install at your home in order to charge your vehicle. We talked about earlier You don't need a special charging station. Your car technically comes with a charger, just like your phone comes with a charger, your laptop comes with a charger, and you just plug it right into the wall and you can charge it into the wall. David mentioned about if you want to have that a little bit faster charging, you can get that 240 outlet, put into your garage, and then you can charge a little faster. That's like running your dryer, your air conditioner, electric stove, etc. It's not really extra equipment. It's just an extra circuit that needs to be run. And so that's an option that you can do to charge at home. So there's not really special equipment that's needed. You can get special equipment if you want some super fast charging at your house. You can, but it's not necessary. Matter of fact, I know there are a lot of EV drivers that they just charge on that, regular 110 outlet.
Yeah, you're talking to two of them right here.
Entirely doable.
I'm on a level 1. David's on a level 1. David has a plug-in hybrid. I have a battery electric vehicle. It doesn't, it doesn't matter what, what type of vehicle it is. If it's electric in any capacity, you can charge it right at home. Like Tammy said, all electric vehicles sold come with a level 1 charger. So you don't have to do anything except plug that level 1 charger into an outlet in whatever outlet you have, and you are good to go in terms of charging.
Bear in mind that OEMs you can't just grab like an extension cord out of the garage and do it. It does take a special kind of charging cord, but those are always provided by the car manufacturer.
Yep. Tammy, do you have another one?
So the other one that's out there is that EV prices are way too high. Purchasing an EV is really high. We've talked before about how cars in general are just really high right now because of the chip shortage and all of that. So I suppose if you just think new car prices are high, they're high. There's not much we could do about that. But 45% of people don't know there is a tax credit available for when you purchase an EV. All of the EV models, and these are hybrid electrics and fully battery electrics, they are eligible for a rebate from the federal government of up to $7,500. And I say up to because it depends on the size of the battery that's in the vehicle. Pretty much all of the battery electric vehicles are eligible for the full $7,500 rebate. Plug-in hybrids, it varies based on, like I said, what the size of the battery is. But that is for any models except for, as of right now, Teslas are no longer eligible because the rebate could only be used on the first 7,500 vehicles. And GM products are no longer eligible because they've used up their 200,000 vehicles. Did I say 2,500 the first time? It's 200,000.
Yeah, it's 200,000. You misspoke and said 7,500, but it's 200,000 is the threshold. And then once that 200 threshold is met, then you are no longer able to get the federal rebate. But
it doesn't end immediately. It starts to step down, so the amount you get back decreases over time.
Yeah, there's a quarterly phase out. I think it's a quarterly phase out, or 2 quarters worth of phase outs, and then eventually it goes down. But as Tammy said, that 200,000 threshold has only been hit by GM and Tesla. So, and also I would like to clarify, this is for new purchases only. This is not for any used vehicle that you may purchase yourself.
Right. This is just on new vehicles for the first owner. If you are someone who leases vehicles, a lot of times you can work out a deal with the leasing company. They'll take that initial $7,500 credit and take it off the cost with your lease, and so you get a little bit better deal that way. So there's that option as well.
That's exactly what I did, because mine is a lease, and they simply dropped. It was about $4,500, and they just dropped that off the sticker price.
Yeah, so that's an option too. There is some discussion in Congress right now with the Build Back Better plan that the EV credit could be reinstated for Teslas and GMs and any other manufacturers who may be coming up on that 200,000 vehicle limit. So that it may be reinstated for that. It may be increased, especially if you're talking about American vehicles. So we'll see what happens with that and kind of watch that and see if that the rebate is increased or the tax credit is increased. But that's definitely something to think about when you're comparing vehicles, because you're not going to get that $7,500 off of a combustion vehicle. So it's something to think about to help bring those EV prices more in line with combustion vehicles. But we've talked already that even though they have a little bit higher price to begin with, you get the tax credit, so that's going to take a little bit off the price, and you have those much lower costs of ownership with, you know, the maintenance and the fueling, etc. And so total cost of ownership, as David said, is almost always to the positive.
And unfortunately, the state of Kansas and the state of Missouri do not have any state incentives for electric vehicles, although there are states out there that do have additional savings that can be associated with electric vehicles when you're purchasing them. They just are not in our states, unfortunately. We wish that would.
That said, if you're listening in a state that is not Kansas or Missouri, feel free to check it out, because there may be opportunities out there that you're not aware of. In most cases, it's going to be your state revenue department or potentially state environmental department. We're probably going to have information about that.
Yeah, and those rebates can be significant. You know, you can get tax credits in Colorado, I think, of up to $5,000, I believe. California has some credits, so definitely worth looking into.
All right. Thank you, Tammy, for going into those myths. And I just want to finish this up by asking one question to David about electric vehicles and his personal experience. What are the biggest differences between a gasoline car and an EV when you're driving them? Do you notice any difference when you're driving? Maybe not the experience, but just some of the things in your car that are a bit different.
Not a huge difference. And of course, since I've got a plug-in hybrid, it's closer to a conventional vehicle than a pure battery electric car would be. But one thing that I do like about it is that it's got extra power when you need it. So if you're merging onto the highway and you have to punch it, and you have, you know, instant torque is available at your toe tips when you're merging onto the highway, that is a handy feature. I do like that. But other than that, other than the fact that it's pleasantly quiet, particularly when you're driving around town, it's not that different. The fuel is pretty much the same. The comfort is pretty much the same. Hasn't really been an issue.
So one of my favorite things about an electric vehicle is regeneration.
Yes.
So you get you get the regeneration in both plug-in hybrids and battery electric vehicles. And what regeneration really means is whenever you are taking your foot off the accelerator and in a regular, I shouldn't say regular, in a gasoline vehicle, you're coasting. Electric vehicles don't coast really, do they, David?
Well, they can, or
they can.
They coast. Some models have basically it's a multi-switch that allows you to select the degree of regen that you're going to produce when you're driving. Nissan Leaf has this, for example. So what you can do is if you set the regen button to the proper setting, you don't really need your brake. You just take your foot off the accelerator and it will generate more electricity by slowing down, and that stops the car for you. It's slightly odd. It can take a little bit of getting used to if you haven't driven a car like that before, but that's a way that you're going to recharge your battery more efficiently when you're actually out on the road moving.
Yeah, and to our audience members, this regeneration isn't going to stop your vehicle on a dime. This is just a slow, pretty natural and like organic slowing down of your vehicle that doesn't it won't affect your brakes nearly that much because you aren't actually braking. You are taking in energy that would normally be applied whenever you are braking, and that makes the car that much more efficient. And then we always talk about how it's a lower maintenance cost. You can expect that your brake pads in your vehicle will last about twice as long. I think that's on average twice as long in an electric vehicle because you simply aren't stopping and using those brakes nearly as often.
Yeah, the whole regen thing in that specific car, the Nissan Leaf, that's the only experience I've had driving an electric that was even a bit different than driving a gasoline powered car.
Yeah, it's definitely like David said, it's definitely interesting. I know, and it's not for everyone. Like David said, there are different grades of how aggressive that regeneration is. I know my wife likes to put it on the chillest of regens, while I like to be a little bit more aggressive with my regen so I can capture or so I can be a little bit more efficient. But there are different grades, and it's pretty easy once you ride it a couple times to get used to it. So one last question for both of you, and it's kind of spontaneous, but what is your favorite thing about an electric vehicle? And Tammy, I will start with you.
Okay, my favorite thing is about an electric vehicle is it's always full. Like I come out and the vehicle's full because you can charge it at home. You don't have to make a separate trip to a fueling station to fill your car. Obviously, if you're on a long trip, you're still going to have that. But in general, all you have to worry about is making sure you've got that vehicle plugged in and it'll be ready to go the next day. As my work hauling kids around as a mom, you know how it is. They've got, sports practices and rehearsals and scout events, etc. And so we're always driving all over here, there, and everywhere. And coincidentally, on most of those routes, there is not a convenient gas station where I can just stop in. I have to make a separate trip somewhere to go fuel up the car. And so not having to do that with an electric is awesome.
And David, how about yourself?
Well, I hate to sound chintzy and cheap, but for me, it's the cost savings. I inherited my last car, which was a six-cylinder Oldsmobile, which ran pretty well, but it 25 miles per gallon, maybe 28, 29 on the highway was a good day. And it got to the point where I was putting $25 or $30 worth of gasoline into the darn thing every 2 weeks. And now I'm spending about 1/5, 1/6 of that on gasoline per month, which is nice. It does add up over time.
Yep. So Tammy, David, thank you for your experience with electric vehicles. Much appreciated. There's so many different reasons to drive electric, and uh, hopefully with this podcast here, our audience has learned something new and has heard from some personal experience. If any of our audience has any questions whatsoever on EVs or any alternative fuels in general, please leave them in the comment section. If you liked what you heard today, go ahead and press that like button at the bottom of the video. And that is all for today for MEC Live. Tammy, David, again, thank you for your input. We appreciate it. And until next time.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks.